On this Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, Brandon Clarke is back, probably, and we are very excited to talk about the likely return of Brandon Clarke tonight for the Memphis Grizzlies. Plus, we're going to talk trade value. We've been talking about prospects a lot, but who would we potentially trade this upcoming lottery pick for? And then we'll also preview Grizzlies Lakers beyond Brandon Clarke. It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Lock in with us.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is a wild and wonderful Wednesday here on Locked On Grizzlies. Happy Brandon Clarke Day to all who celebrate. Assuming he actually plays, he's questionable, but the way the Grizzlies use their injury reports, it's likely he's going to play. Welcome again to another episode of Locked On Grizzlies. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mullinax. Happy to be back with you and happy to be back with my partner in crime, Damichael Cole. We've had a couple solo episodes in a row here. Always nice when Damichael and I are back in the saddle together, talking Memphis Grizzlies basketball with you, our dear listeners, our dear viewers out there in the podcastosphere, whether it's on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, however you get podcasts. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe. Continue to make us part of your Memphis Grizzlies NBA content consumption. Smash that subscribe button. Interact with us in the comments. All those fun things. It is all good here on Locked On Grizzlies. And Damichael, we are going out of March like lions, man. We are freaking focused in, laser-like precision here on Locked On Grizzlies. And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little extra bouncy today on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. I got a little more pep in my step. I feel like if I were on a basketball court as we speak, I would be able to leap, maybe touch the net if I'm lucky, maybe a little bit higher than the bottom of the net, but I'd be able to leap and then re-leap again. And I don't know what has gotten into me, Damichael Cole. I feel especially springy, kind of like a Tigger kind of thing. Why do you think that is?
I mean, there's this guy, you know, he I don't know if people remember or not, but
I remember.
There was once upon a time when there were three floaters among big men that stood out in the NBA. I'll just say a couple. One of them is Nikola Jokic, who is the two-time MVP, possibly three times.
After watching the Grizzlies game, because again, people like to point out, I go to sleep. I'm old, okay?
Let them know, Joe. Let them know.
People making fun of me in the comments saying you don't even watch the late games. That's not true. I do watch the late games. I just watch them in the morning after I wake up after a wonderful night's sleep. Stop hating on my comfortable night's sleep, dear listener, dear viewer. But anyway, I saw that game. Jokic is pretty good at basketball.
Yeah. But you know what? There's a guy for the Grizzlies whose numbers are very comparable to his around the rim. Now, you know, I'm not saying much more than that.
Sure.
But around the rim, you look at the floaters, you look at the spots, the efficiency. But that guy hasn't played a game this season, Joe, but he's about to be back.
He hasn't played a game in a calendar year.
And even better, Joe, he still has the hops. His name is Brandon Clarke.
Yes.
The Grizzlies, this is a name that me and Joe kind of mentioned a couple times as of late. The Grizzlies have needed bigs. They've needed particularly athletic bigs. They've needed particularly scoring bigs. All things that Brandon Clarke has been very efficient in his career. As you mentioned earlier, his return is imminent, likely to happen later today against the Los Angeles Lakers. This has been a game that's kind of been keyed in on for a little bit now in terms of when he could be back. And we're here. So happy Brandon Clarke Day to all those who celebrate. This is another player who I think you can say has been a core member of this team, one who played out his rookie contract and was given a nice sizable extension. You know, you remember it, comparable to the Wendell Carters and Robert Williams and things like that. He got a nice extension. Some people have forgotten, Joe, what this guy brings to the table. Like, this is a guy who first season in the NBA, double-digit points.
Yep.
Second season, double-digit points. Third season, double-digit points. Last season, his role decreased, still averaged double-digit points. You talk about someone who could come in off the bench, give you instant offense. That's what Brandon Clarke does, but it goes beyond that. And while the hops are still there, and we'll dig deeper into this as time goes on. I want to see the lateral mobility, because that's always been a strength of his, right? Going out on the perimeter, being able to hold his own against guards, being able to hold his own against wings, and then using his athleticism inside to bang with the bigger guys while he's listed at 6'7" or 6'8". So with that being the case, I mean, Brandon Clarke is a big piece for this team. I think we all know how he and Jaren Jackson Jr. have paired well throughout their careers. I'm interested to see how Brandon pairs with this version of Jaren. This is a different beast right here.
Yeah.
This is a give me the ball and get out of my way, Jaren Jackson Jr. This is the one that people begged for all of those years. He's here. But the return of Brandon Clarke, Joe, there's a lot of things to be excited about as this time approaches.
I'm excited to see some Jaren and Brandon Clarke pick and rolls. Jaren doing
so 4
a
or
lot
5?
of stuff.
Okay.
Jaren doing a lot more stuff in isolation, a little more handle on the perimeter. I think he's done it before. You've seen flashes of that in the past.
Yeah,
I think he's more prepared now than he's ever been to be able to do some of those things, especially as a passer, right? Maybe throwing some alley-oops to Brandon Clarke. That's a pretty tough matchup, I think. You hit on the lateral quickness, and that's a major piece of this for me, because so much of Brandon Clarke's value is in his defensive versatility, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the common, and we'll talk more about the draft, goodness gracious knows, over the coming weeks. And we'll talk more about the draft pick here in a little bit on the show. But like Donovan Clingan, right? It's no surprise or secret that I'm on the Donovan Clingan UConn train. He looked phenomenal defensively. Fee-fi fo fum. Had his best game of the season, arguably, in the round of 32 for UConn on their way to the Sweet 16 and looking like a potential back-to-back champion. If you're concerned about bigs like Clingan trying to be able to defend wings or trying to defend on the perimeter, Brandon Clarke's not that kind of big. Brandon Clarke's a guy that can switch just about everything. And one of the things that I'm excited to see, hopefully eventually, because Vince Williams Jr. is still doubtful for this game, and we'll talk more about that at the end of the show in our preview. I want to see a Desmond Bane, Vince Williams Jr., Gigi Jackson, Brandon Clarke, Jaren Jackson Jr. 5. Because you can switch a lot of stuff with that.
Switch it all.
There's a lot of switchability with those 5 guys. And I think that, we were talking a little bit before the show about my UVA basketball fandom and how Tony Bennett needs to evolve a little bit as a coach. He's a great coach, but there has to be improvement. Adapt or die, right?
Yeah.
Going into this next season for Taylor Jenkins, not necessarily defensively, but overall, things have to be tweaked. He has to adapt. And there's going to be a heightened sense of expectation for this Grizzlies team. Brandon Clarke's going to be a major piece of that. So I want to see what they do in terms of switching things. I want to see how they deploy Brandon and that versatility that he has as a guy that can score in and around the paint, can set some screens, bring that energy, bring that juice, so to speak. Because we talk a lot about Gigi Jackson, Vince Williams Jr., Marcus Smart starting. Brandon Clarke's going to be part of that conversation as well, especially if they see Jaren as the starting center moving forward. If Jaren, if they draft a Clingan or if they go out and they make a move to try to bring in another big, that's different, right? Maybe Jaren stays at the 4, but as you have talked about, and I don't necessarily disagree, if they see Jaren as the answer at the 5, Brandon Clarke's just as much in the conversation to start as anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big piece of this team because even if you don't put him in that starting lineup, so to speak, think about it like let's use your guy for example, Donovan Clingan. Let's say the Grizzlies draft Donovan Clingan, put him alongside Jaren Jackson Jr. He's a rookie. He's a rookie, and I can foresee in that situation there will be a lot of games where you go late in the fourth quarter and you say, Clingan, you ain't ready for these moments yet. Let's get Brandon Clarke in there. It's that optionality that I like when you talk about where Brandon Clarke has really been impactful for the Grizzlies. Think about so many games over the past couple years, or even going back to when Valanciunas was here. Valanciunas, Steven Adams, they were bad matchups against certain teams. And okay, no problem. We got Brandon Clarke. Bring him in. I mean, that Minnesota Timberwolves series, is there any other time period that's more reflective of that? Steven Adams, as great as he was for the Grizzlies, was played off the floor pretty much for the first time in his career, pretty much off the floor to the point where he wasn't even coming off the bench. He was just out of the rotation. That's how bad it was in that series. But there was only one player in that series that you could say was better than Brandon Clarke. And there's an argument to be made there, and that's Desmond Bane. Brandon Clarke was a big reason why the Grizzlies beat the Timberwolves. So he gives you that optionality. You can bring him off the bench and have him close games alongside Jaren Jackson Jr. when you're in certain matchups. If you're going against those super big, Jokic type guys, and you're saying we want the bigger big in there, then you keep your Clinton, type big in there. But he gives you the optionality. He gives you that scoring boost off the bench. We know about the rim running ability that he has, which is going to give guys some open 3-point looks, because when you see him running to that rim, you better come crashing down from that weak side or that strong side. So with all that being said, I think this is a nice boost for the Grizzlies. And then one more thing, because some people say, well, what's the point of him coming back? There's 12 games left, right? I don't want to get too deep into this yet, because I think Brandon Clarke should be here beyond this season, beyond next season, and so forth. But the idea that you could put film out there of Brandon Clarke post Achilles, not just for yourself in terms of, okay, we trust what we have, but if you get in a situation where you have to move and dangle some contracts, we know the money is about to get tight around here. And if Brandon Clarke is a name that potentially, intrigues another team, then you say, okay, well, look at the last 10 games. Whereas in the past, no one was going to really say, oh, we want Brandon Clarke because we haven't seen him after the Achilles. But there's two sides of it. There's that putting that film out there for the opponents just in case, that type of situation pops up. But there's also the fact that you could put that film out there just to have that comfortability as you go into the draft, as you go into the free agency. We know what we have in Brandon Clarke instead of being hopeful that he could be the same player.
Yeah, I think that the way that they've handled this has been a home run, right? Because I think you've reported and others have reported he's been playing 5-on-5 for weeks, right?
Yeah,
so you could argue he probably could have come back a little bit earlier than this.
For sure.
They wanted to be sure that he was good to go, and they wanted to be sure that the minutes they got from him were effective, non-injury concerned. Doesn't mean that he's going to go out there and log 30-some minutes tonight. But I do think that they want, for that reason, whether it's for the ability for Memphis to say, look at this nice, shiny, matching contract, this guy can still play, or whether it's what I think is the answer, Jaren, Ja, and Dez see him as the fourth man. If that's the case, then you want him to be ready and prepared and as healthy as possible going into a pretty important offseason. So happy Brandon Clarke Day to one and all as we celebrate here on Locked On Grizzlies. And welcome back to Brandon Clarke, one of my favorite Grizzlies to watch play. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch him back out there. More than likely tonight, again, barring some unforeseen setback, Clarke looks ready to make his season debut a year roughly removed from an Achilles injury. So that's a big deal. Congratulations to Brandon. Hopefully he's good to go, and we'll get to watch him play again. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk briefly about the lottery pick, because, again, Damichael and I are about to have a lot of episodes to fill. So we'll talk a lot more about the draft and that sort of thing. But I just wanted to gauge Damichael's value of that 7th-ish round pick coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, before we get to all of that, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by eBay Motors. No worries, no pauses necessary here, Damichael. Passion, drive, patience, what brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die whip alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one car, you will always find exactly what you need every single time. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home the win. Keep your ride or die whip alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to United States customers. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, talking the value of a lottery selection for the Memphis Grizzlies. Stick with us. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, flying not solo this time, flying as a partnership once again with my wonderful co-host, Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. He's the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. Make sure you're following his work at Damichael C on X. Subscribe to the Commercial Appeal. See everything he's writing about Brandon Clarke's impending return and then some. I, formerly writer, now podcaster, expert at annoying people in the comments and online. And Damichael, I think I'm going to kind of do it again here because Well, again, I want to stress we're going to talk a lot about this kind of stuff once the season ends, right? We got a lot of
we're going to beat this. We're going to beat this
thing. Yeah. But I wanted to start the conversation because, we talk a lot about Donovan Clingan, how he might be a top 5 pick now. Memphis may not even be able to pick my boy anymore. He's building up his value so much. Filipowski of Duke, right? More of a floor spacing big, best player available, Ron Holland, whatever the case might be, right? We talk a lot about that. I will say you're not supposed to let the tournament deflate your opinion of players, but the Kentucky backcourt's kind of dead to me. Like, I put them in the championship game, Damichael Cole.
All right, Joe.
And those two guys are they're pretty dead to me. They couldn't cook Oakland, Damichael. Now, I'm not talking about the Golden State Warriors, Oakland. I'm talking about the Oakland Grizzlies, dude.
Yeah, this team, they're based.
If I asked
they're a Michigan Oakland
to point out you gave it away. Where the Oakland Grizzlies go to school, what state they were in, people would have pointed to California and not Michigan. But I digress. How much do you value that lottery pick? Because looking at the lay of the land in terms of trade value, and again, that's the purpose of this initial brief conversation, who you'd be willing, what tier of player you'd be willing to move a lottery pick, again, 5, 6, 7, 4, wherever it lands, God forbid 1. Obviously, those names increase or decrease with lottery odds and wherever you land. I keep coming back to somebody that people are going to give me a hard time for in the comments. Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
The Brooklyn Nets have not had the best season, right? They had to fire their coach, all that sort of stuff.
It's very clear that he's not a number 1 option.
Very clear he's not number one option. So this time last year, if you remember correctly,
they tried to
after the Grizzlies offered 4 first-round picks for this man, they said, no, we're not doing that. This guy's the main guy. He can be our man. We're not giving – I wonder if they regret that.
There's no way you turn down 4 first because you're not getting 4 first rounders.
No way now. So. But I will point out to Michael, do you know what the combined salaries for next season of John Conchar, Zaire Williams, and Luke Kennard get you? Assuming team options and all that stuff.
There he is.
$21.7 million. Guess what Mikal Bridges makes next season? $21.7 million. So those 3 names that I just said for salary matching purposes, plus number 7 overall, plus an additional first-round pick, I find it hard to believe that the Brooklyn Nets would say no to that, to Michael Cole. So that would be my name to, maybe pick up the phone, call the Nets, say, hey, the value's gone down a little bit, but we may still be interested in a Mikal Bridges. And can you imagine, you mentioned how he's not a number 1 option. Mikal Bridges as a number 3 or 4 option, that's a championship basketball team. It's worth the call, in my opinion. That's where I would go. I think that is possible with this lottery pick and then some other things, right? That pick alone is not getting you Mikal Bridges. What say you? What do you think in terms of the value? What tier of player you think I'm close? Maybe not specifically Mikal, but in that ballpark?
I'm picking up what you're putting down. Like, I think maybe you add on 1 additional first in addition to what you just said.
And for the record, I would do that.
Yeah. I think you throw 1 more first rounder on top of it and you get a deal there. No Diddy. So I think that's where I am in terms of what gets you Mikal Bridges. Now, what gets you, what can you get with that 7th overall pick in terms of without adding on potential another first round and things like that? I think you can get a solid start in NBA because there are some kind of false, I guess, misrepresentations on things on like what this draft class is to me. Sure. This draft class doesn't have the Victor Wembanyama, the Paolo Banchero, the LeBron James and those caliber players. This draft class, at least on paper right now, you evaluate it. There doesn't seem to be that clear cut, that guy's going to come to the league and shift your franchise right away type of guy. But there are so many guys that I see that I say he's going to be solid. He's going to be solid. 15 to 18 point per game guy, 8-9 year starter. Plenty of those guys. I could see Alex Sarr in that role. I don't know how to say the other French guy, the forward. I could see him in that role. I could say Buzelis in that role. I could see Rob Dillingham in that role. I could see Reed Shepard in that role. I could see Jacoby
They
Walton.
couldn't cook the Oakland Grizzlies.
They cooked.
Stop talking about the Kentucky backcourt.
They cooked a whole bunch of SEC teams.
Oh, the SEC must be terrible compared to the Oakland Grizzlies. I saw a dude shoot and make 10 3-pointers over their heads to Damichael Cole.
Well,
that guy's probably working at a car dealership right now. That guy went from destroying the Kentucky Wildcats to working at Oakland Chevy dealership. Nissan Armadas being sold by that guy that hit 10 threes against the freaking Kentucky backcourt.
And that's all true. But you know what? That's what makes March great. Like, I mean, freaking, what was that 38-0 Kentucky team, that Devin Booker, Karl Anthony Towns, all that? They lost to Frank Kaminsky. Like,
embarrassing.
What are we talking about? So the thing is, there are so many players in this draft where you put them on that Grizzlies roster, they'll fit in, they'd be solid, and they go to other teams that be solid players. So with that being said, I think there is higher value in that 7th, 6th, 7th pick, wherever the Grizzlies end up. From the standpoint, you can go get a cost-controlled starter. And I say cost-controlled because I think that the 7th overall pick is worth more than going to get a guy who has 1 year left on his contract, unless you're getting, a bona fide, close like to a star. But a guy who has 1 year left on his contract is not what I would be eyeing. I would be eyeing a guy who has 2, potentially even 3 more seasons left in a situation, that's not an admirable situation for them. And you could bring him over to Memphis. That is the type of player that I think makes sense. Because the Grizzlies, at the end of the day, I know we're talking about trading this pick, but they have to be able to sell it. Remember, we were talking about with Dylan Brooks last year with the whole sign and trade thing and, that situation. You have to be able to sell it like you need that pick. You have to be able to sell it like we don't have to trade this pick. We can just keep it and, add a player to the core. That's the way you have to be able to sell it. And from everything that I've heard, like I've said, this is the most in my short time, 3 seasons covering the Grizzlies, that I've heard about them on the scouting trails, like going all over the globe, scouting guys to potentially add to the roster. So they're definitely appealing that way around the league. And with that being the case, I think there's going to be strong appeal for this pick. And if they do trade it, you're not going to get a scrub.
Not going to get a scrub. You're going to get somebody that is a contending type player. Who do you think could be realistic for that 6 or 7 pick in the 2024 NBA draft, assuming that's where Memphis selects? Let us know in the comments. And again, that's just a small sample, a morsel. Okay, We're not going to give away the whole candy bar. We're just giving you a small piece here on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. We got a few weeks until the season concludes, and then it's going to be a lot of NBA draft talk here on Locked On Grizzlies. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we'll close out the show previewing Grizzlies-Lakers going down tonight. Stick with us for that. But first, I want to remind you that Locked On Sports Today is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring the biggest stories without all the screaming from shows like on Fox Sports or ESPN having to turn down the volume. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysts, opinions, news. We're streaming 24/7 on YouTube as well as on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. Take the Nissan Rogue, 2024 Rogue, perfect for city drives and great escapes. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure with class exclusive Google built-in, which is always updating with an assistant to call on for almost anything. If you want a bigger ride, the 2024 Nissan Armada will change what you expect from a full-size SUV, a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. You can tow bigger and explore further in the Armada. So whether it's the Rogue, the Armada, or even the Nissan Pathfinder, go and find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV, providing access to millions of movies and TV episodes as well as free and live television. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. And Fire TV recently created the Fire TV channels to develop a constant supply of the latest videos for your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us on Locked On and most of the big pro sports leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep you up to date on all the latest going on in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, Major League Baseball, and so much more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking as well. Check out Fire TV channels on the Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you definitely should. Trust us on this. Learn more at www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Give us a check out there. Pretty cool service we're providing through Locked On now. All right, Damichael, Lakers, Grizzlies tonight. Get you out of here on this. Brandon Clarke is back. We've talked about how excited we are. We're not quite ready for an NBA draft just yet. We still got some basketball to play. Beyond Brandon Clarke's return, I know LeBron James's injury availability is questionable going into the contest. What are we looking for from Memphis going into this game? Again, usually a bigger deal this time, around this time of year, but this gap year, the Grizzlies not going to the playoffs. This would have had a big fight feel if the season had gone the way that we wanted it to.
Yeah.
But as such, the Grizzlies kind of are playing out the slate. What will that look like against the Lakers, who are fighting for their play-in live still?
Well, Brandon Clarke's going to have to knock some rust off and all that stuff. So he's going to be given some leeway. Whether he has, he can put up a cardio line today, and I think people will forgive him as long as he grabs a couple boards. But he can go over and everything else probably, and he'll be forgiven. But anyways, with that being said, I want to see Brandon Clarke against this Lakers front court, because again, we're talking about where the Grizzlies need to go this offseason. And the idea potentially that Jaren could be a center. Does he need to go back to power forward? I've said it a couple times, and you've heard me say it, Joe, that a lot of it kind of depends on what's around him. More so, like, the Grizzlies know his skill set. The Grizzlies are still throwing him out there at center, despite the fact that he's not getting 5 rebounds every night. Like, they know the situation. I don't think they are oblivious to the idea that Jaren is not a great rebounder. They know that.
Bloggers and podcasters haven't figured it out better than the Grizzlies coaches. That's fair.
Everyone else just assumes that the Grizzlies think that he's going to turn into some 10 rebound guy. No, that's not the case. But there are other options. And Brandon Clarke is a guy who fits the mold of someone, as we've kind of touched on, you can play alongside of Jaren. This game against the Lakers, talking about Anthony Davis averaging over 12.5 boards this season.
He's a monster. And he's always crushed the Grizzlies the last couple of years.
Always crushed, yeah. The only time I think he doesn't really crush them is when Steven Adams would be against him. But other than that, I mean, that playoff series, there was no Steven Adams around. And Anthony Davis was probably the best player in that series. So with all that being said, welcome back, Brandon Clarke. Now go save the Grizzlies front court. Like, that's pretty much where I am. Also, of course, I'm going to outline Gigi Jackson's defensive matchups pretty much every game now from this point on. Like, I know that's probably going to become an old point to some of you, but D'Angelo Russell has been really good this year. And I think someone pointed out to me, said, is D'Angelo Russell the best shooter that the Lakers have ever had? And the first thing you want to say, Joe, is of course not. Like, it's the Lakers. It's the Lakers. But if you look at the numbers in the history, the Lakers really haven't been known for having great, like, lights out shooters ever. The front court guys and the point guards and, the wings, but it's never been this 40% 3-point shooters consistently lighting it up season after season. But the season that he's having is up there, in terms of from a shooting standpoint. I want to see Gigi Jackson get that matchup, because that's going to be the guy he's probably going to have to guard. One of D'Angelo Russell's best assets is the way he can just maneuver through, like screens and things like that. Like, he is a tough guard to pick up in those situations. I want to see Gigi Jackson go against him as well. But the Lakers front court versus the Grizzlies front court is the matchup that mostly impresses me with this game. And welcome back, Brandon Clarke. Let's see if you can go bang with the big boys.
This is mostly going to be a cop-out, okay? I apologize in advance. Between it being the Lakers, and I know you know this, Damichael, being there in Memphis. I lived there for a few years. A lot of folks are paying for next season's season tickets tonight, because they're selling those tickets to somebody that lives in a suburb 30 minutes away that wants to take their 7-year-old who loves LeBron James to watch the Lakers game. So you're going to have a strong Lakers contingent in that arena. You are going to have the energy that hopefully will come with Brandon Clarke's return. Desmond Bane will be on the floor, Jaren Jackson Jr. People are excited about Gigi Jackson. I just want to see a good environment because we're about to not see the Grizzlies for some time, right? The season's about to end. We don't have playoff basketball this year. I just want a smack roll, right? I just want a morsel. I've been saying that word a lot this episode. I just want a tiny little sliver.
Thinking about the old days, huh? You want to get back to
I just want to feel alive again, Damichael. You know what I'm saying? Like that Spurs game on Friday, the competitiveness. Yeah, they were two bad teams, but they were freaking fighting, man. Yeah. Like I just want to feel alive before the season ends.
I like that. I like that, Joe.
And I think that, you're going to be in the building. You're going to have a chance tonight to see it live. People clapping for Brandon Clarke. I hope we get a nice little throwdown dunk. You drop the bomb on me, a little Gap band playing. Mm-hmm. That's what I want to see. That's what
we haven't heard Whoop That Trick this whole season.
I would love for Whoop That Trick to be played towards the end of the game. Yeah. Beat LA. Gosh, you remember the Beat LA days?
Beat LA chant was.
It was a different LA, but still, I need to fan myself here. I just would love that feeling because I know we're not going to have it. And I think the return of Brandon Clarke is worthy. So if you're going to the game tonight, let us know in the comments. Be excited, right? Start that Whoop That Trick chant. Be the person that applauds obnoxiously for Brandon Clarke. Mm-hmm. Try to start the playoff energy that we're not going to get to have this year. We've been spoiled these last few years. We're not going to get to see playoff basketball for the Grizzlies. Bring the energy, bring the vibe. That's what I want to see.
I love it. I mean, that's you just put it perfectly. Like the energy in these last few weeks over the last couple months, it's been in and out, And when the Lakers come to town, like you said, they're going to bring that big contingency of fans. There's a lot of Laker fans in Memphis, whether it was the Kobe Bryant days and now the LeBron James days. It's always been that way with the Lakers fan base. But this is a different time with Grizzlies fans. Like the Ja Morant era and of course the tone that the grit and grind era set kind of stabilize this Grizzlies fan base from the standpoint of there is pride there. I'm like, no, you're not about to come in our house and show us up. Like, we're going to come too. That's what you need in this game. You bring the energy. It's Brandon Clarke's first game. It should be a fun one.
Let's go. Bring the energy. Let us know if you're going to the game tonight in the comments. And if you are, maybe you can try to find Damichael Cole as he covers the game. And you can let him know how much you love him and how much you despise me as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. But that's okay. It's all good here on Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you guys so much for checking out the episode. I've got some bad news or good news, depending on your perspective of me. I'm flying solo on the next show. Damichael going to be quite busy covering the return of Brandon Clarke, the likely return of Brandon Clarke. And goodness knows that Brandon Clarke's not playing. Damichael will be busy covering why that is. So point being, I'll be with you on our Thursday episode of the show. We'll break down Grizzlies Lakers, talk about how Brandon Clarke looked, all that sort of stuff. And then Damichael and I will be back together heading into Friday and the weekend. That's the plan for the next couple of episodes. Whether you're subscribing, liking, rating, reviewing, commenting on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts, hopefully you make us a part of your day each and every day. It is appreciated. However you listen or watch to the show, let us know how we're doing. Hit us up in the comments. Most importantly, smash that subscribe button and continue to be part of the Locked On Grizzlies experience. Until next time, remember Locked On Sports 24/7. Check that out on YouTube as well as Amazon Fire TV. And make sure you're checking out Grizzlies Lakers tonight. It's going to be a good one. Welcome back, Brandon Clarke. Celebrate Brandon Clarke Day. Go jump somewhere. Go jump up and then try to jump up again really fast. We'll catch you next time on Locked On Grizzlies.